Hey guys, this is the lecture video for Chapter 10, which covers real GDP and price level in the long run. So to get us started, we're going to think about a lot of things with regard to the economy in the long run. So there's something called secular stagnation, which is a reduction in the nation's long run rate of economic growth to a small average annual rate over a lengthy period. So basically, not a lot of growth, not significant growth for a long period of time. In other words, now some economists argue that secular stagnation affects a country's level of prices over time and its inflation rates. So basically, in this chapter, these are the kinds of things we're going to be learning about. We're going to learn about how certain key long-term determinants of the price level, namely long-run aggregate demand and aggregate supply, coming together, and we're going to we're going to evaluate how secular stagnation affects inflation. So for our learning objectives for this chapter, we first want to be able to discuss the concept of long-run aggregate supply and describe the effect of economic growth on the long-run aggregate supply curve. Next, we want to be able to explain why the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping, and also be able to list the key factors that cause the aggregate demand curve to shift. Next, we want to be able to evaluate the meaning of long-run equilibrium in an economy as a whole, and also be able to explain why economic growth itself can actually cause deflation or a decrease in prices. And lastly, we want to be able to evaluate what are the likely reasons for the persistent inflation that we've seen over the last several decades. So the outline here is first looking at output growth and long-run aggregate supply curve, moving on next to total expenditures and aggregate demand, then looking at long-run equilibrium, bringing the two pieces together and seeing how that determines the price level in an economy. And then lastly, looking at the causes of this persistent inflation over time. So to get you to think about this a little bit more, did you know that since 2007, U.S. real GDP has grown an average of about 200 billion per year, which sounds like a lot, but on a percentage scale, that's only 1.2% per year. So pretty stagnant growth, not very robust, not very strong growth. And so what this means is that the United States has experienced basically its slowest growth in economic activity since the Great Depression of the 1930s. So ask yourself as we go through this lecture, what are the implications of subdued real GDP growth?